6,000. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to hold that number in mind, 6,000. Because that's roughly the amount of thoughts that races through our minds each and every day. Those thoughts can range from the mundane, the casual, the musings about the decisions we make about our daily lives. What should I have for lunch? What will I be doing this weekend? But I think those thoughts also rush into very quickly thoughts that are a lot more reflective, a lot more important, questions about who we are as individuals, questions about our belongingness, questions about our sense of self-worth in this world. As a member of Gen Z, I would think that at least one of those questions has crossed your minds. A question of, innocently, what will I be doing with myself after I finish my studies? Now, you may disagree with me, but I think this question is of importance. To me, it is shorthand, short form for a larger question about your identity. Who am I as an individual, and what is my place in this world? Research in psychology has quite firmly established that the words that we use creates, shapes, and shapes the world that we see around us. Language creates the realities that we experience. And so, if your inner dialogue, your inner voice, is one which is filled with positivity, you're going to think a lot more favorably about yourself. It's going to have an impact on your self-esteem. Flip the coin. If you start thinking about yourself using negative terms, you're critical, you're judgmental, you limit yourself only solely by using those negative terms, you're going to think a lot more poorly about yourself. Your self-esteem is going to be affected as well. And so it's been brought to my attention from recent polls that the worrying thing that we're seeing from Gen Z is that they are, compared to all previous generations, the most critical generation, the most critical to themselves. Gen Z, many of you would already know, digital natives, we've heard that term over and over. They have a lot of technological momentum. They're riding on the waves of new technologies, technologies that were not evident as recently as 5 to 10 years ago. They are entrepreneurial, they are creative, they are survivors of the pandemic. And so it is troubling that what we're seeing from recent polls is that they are also floundering. They are the least confident generation. And can you really blame them? This is a generation who has grown up in the midst of flux, in the midst of change. The world seems uncertain. The environment seems unpredictable. Everyone's favorite four-letter acronym, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, a defining feature of the world in which they grow up in. Compound that with the fact that Gen Z are socially connected, always on, always connected. The sad paradox and irony of it all being that the most connected generation is also the loneliest. The generation that is most aware of mental health challenges they are aware of, they are cognizant of, they are self-aware about their own mental health struggles, are also the ones to report the greatest levels of depression, anxiety, and stress compared to all previous generations. Now, surely this can't be right. Maybe this is a poll that's been taken from external sources. Maybe it's not reflective of what Gen Z is experiencing here in Malaysia. So I wanted to ask the question, how is Gen Z doing in Malaysia? I start out with a simple question, just to gauge, get an initial check of the emotions, the words, the language that Gen Z is using to describe themselves. And folks, you can play along with this as well. First question I asked my students, all of whom are Gen Z, simple question. Let's start with the bad news. What don't you like about yourselves? Easy, isn't it? I compiled the responses and I generated a word cloud from it all. You could probably just do a skim through of the word cloud here. You see the words shyness, unsociable, insecurities, unmotivated. But ladies and gentlemen, the keywords that stand out for me prominently, if you know word clouds, the more prominently they are displayed, the more frequently they appear in responses. I see the words myself, everything, being, not. You see overthinking running along there. Sensitive. I read that, and I think, folks, it's troubling for me that what stood out for me, the summary, the theme from this word cloud is essentially everything about being myself is not enough. But hang on, if you ask people what they don't like about themselves, obviously, they're going to tell you that, well, a whole host of things, from my physical appearance, from my lack of abilities, from the fact that I can't socialize well enough, the fact that I don't have enough friends, there's probably something wrong with me. Surely you're going to get a pessimistic set of responses. What if we were to ask Gen Z what they did like about themselves? Henceforth, the second question. Gen Z, over to you. What do you like about yourself? Did the same processes of just compiling all the data, all the responses, and we generated another word cloud. And this is the cloud that you see here. Oh, great. We see kindness, we see optimism, we see persistent, we see strong-hearted, fast, that pairs up with learning. We see the word good smack bang in the center of the word cloud. We see skills as well. And I thought it was quite interesting that many of the Gen Z respondents are saying that, hey, I'm good at this particular skill, I'm good at this particular subject. But I think all of you would have already spotted another troubling word in the midst of this word cloud, the word nothing. A fair number of the Gen Z respondents for this activity told me that there was nothing they liked about themselves. And so if you put two and two together, if you ask Gen Z, what don't they like about themselves? They say everything. What do you like about yourselves? They say nothing. I think we have reasons to be concerned. If the inner dialogue is one of criticism towards themselves rather than one of compassion, then we need to take stock, because Gen Z are going to be our future colleagues, collaborators, peers, and hopefully someday our leaders. And if our future leaders think so poorly of themselves, then it is time that we change their inner dialogue. What can we do? What can we do to shift the inner dialogue, the inner speech, the cacophony of criticism that plagues and torments Gen Z's minds, and change that into something that's a lot more caring, compassionate, kind towards themselves? We need a new language. And fortunately, that new language already exists. Thanks to the positive psychology movement over the past 20 to 30 years, we now have a language, a vocabulary, a lexicon of what is already good within us. It is the language of strengths. Character strengths are essentially the work of two prominent positive psychologists, Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman. And just to give you a little bit of a background before I show you the new language that we're all going to learn here today, how this team of positive psychologists came to this list, this new language. It wasn't anything new. The answers were just right in front of us. We just need to know where to look. So what Peterson and Seligman did was to assemble a team of 55 scientists from around the world. And over the span of 3 years, they scoured the scripture and the literature across broad domains of study: moral education, philosophy, psychology, theology. This span of work spanned 2,500 years and across different cultures, customs, and traditions. So if you think this is a language that is only learnable and usable from people in the West, allow me to challenge you on this. 2,500 years worth of literature and scripture has allowed us to formulate a new language that best describes what humanity has to offer. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the 24 character strengths on screen right now. How would you use to describe, what words would you use to describe yourselves? Certainly not just, well, I'm good, I'm kind, I'm compassionate. There's a whole list of terms here in which we can expand upon in the vocabulary that is far more compassionate, kind, accepting, and understanding towards ourselves. Not just one, and not just two, 24 new descriptors that reflect the best of what humanity has to offer. And having taught psychology for the past 12 years, I think I know maybe a thing or two about teaching, a new concept, a new idea, but this is tricky for me. This is a new language. How would I share this new language with you? So I thought to myself, I could do this in one of three ways. Teachers, academics, instructors, educators in the audience would know. Maybe firstly, what I could do is to summarize all the key points from the strengths book. And then I will highlight the points, and then we'll discuss that. I could lecture style, but I won't. I could share with you that this work comes from rigorous science. So it's not as if the words that you see on screen here are just pulled out willy-nilly. There was a scientific process that went into it. And so maybe what we could do to understand the scientific basis for strengths is to read through a couple of journal articles. I hear faint groans in the audience. I could do that, but I will not do that. Shivers, isn't it? Oh my gosh, journal articles. The third thing I could do is to invite you all to complete a 240-item questionnaire on strengths. Get your results. It's always a fun discussion. Hey, you know what? This is my key strength. This is my quote-unquote superpower. I could, but I won't. I have a far easier way of sharing this new language of strengths with you. And good news, I've done the hard work. You can learn and share the language of strengths quite simply by hosting a movie marathon. And that's precisely what I've done in the past month. So as a researcher, as a scientist, what I've done is spent 100 hours over the last month watching 22 movies from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 11 movies from the Star Wars universe. I watched both the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies and cross-referenced them with the books just to be sure. And just for good measure, because I had a bit of time left over, a sprinkling of Harry Potter movies. And I've come to a profound, simple realization about what strengths are and what the heroes that we see on the silver screen, how they portray the best of humanity to us. You see, folks, strengths are not abilities. They're not skills, and definitely they're not superpowers. They are simply representations of the virtue that lies within us already, the goodness that sleeps quietly, unassumingly, humbly, deeply within us. Their unassuming but positive presence doesn't yet have a voice. It is your job, a challenge to you almost, to give your strengths a voice. If we could learn the language of strengths through the simple act of watching movies and just paying closer attention to our heroes, I think this is just one simple way in which we can learn the language of heroes. And so what I have with me right now is a captive audience. And this captive audience, I want you to try and guess the quotes that you see. Who are they from? Who said those? Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. At some point, you might have heard that one, we all have to choose between what the world wants you to be and who you are. Bravery features very much as part of heroic folktales, myths. That's from Lady Galadriel and Natasha Romanoff. We talk about leadership, and paradoxically, the science tells us that those who are the best leaders are those who don't seek power for its own sake. If you want to know what a man is like, take a good look at how he treats his inferiors, not his equals. This day does not belong to one man, nor one woman. It belongs to us all. May we share in the days of peace. Quotes from Sirius Black. Some of you got that, right? Snapped your hand, right? Aragon. Quotes here reflecting leadership. Hope, and I think it's quite interesting that if you watch movies closely enough and you hear the scripts, hope is when it's that resource, it's that inner strength that we can draw upon when it all seems bleak and pessimistic. Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if one remembers to turn on the light. That's by Albus Dumbledore. Another quote there from Poe Dameron, as long as there is light, we've got a chance. Forgiveness, many of you might be thinking, as a weakness, if not a meekness, but only the strong forgive. Psychological research tells us that it takes courage, it takes that inner conviction and strength to know that relationship is something that we still want to save, something that we want to maintain, and forgiveness stops us from spiraling down that cycle of hate and aggression. Vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them. I'm done letting it consume me. Similarly, it is useless To meet revenge with revenge, it will heal nothing. Quotes from T'Challa, the Black Panther, and Frodo Baggins from The Lord of the Rings. And arguably our most important strength, the ability to love, the capacity for love, to receive and to give love. This is your chance to earn that look in your daughter's eyes, to become the hero that she already thinks you are. It's not about saving our world, it's about saving theirs. Self-sacrificial love, parental love. We know this from the psychological sciences as crucial, non-negotiable for the benefit of our relationships. It's the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk, not heroes, that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love. Any guesses who said those? Hank Pym from Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Gandalf from The Hobbit. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I hope to have been able to share with you some of the ways in which we can learn this new language of strengths, the language of heroes. And if you care to join me now for a call to action as we share this new language with Gen Z, 3 things that we could do. By the end of today's session, I want you to come along, join me on this journey as we share this new language and hopefully empower Gen Z. First thing I want you to do, the next time you watch a movie, watch for strengths. Who thought research could be that fun? Who thought watching movies could be this empowering? It certainly can. Pay attention to, have a chat about what it was that stood out for you, and then amongst the heroes you watched on screen. Second, slightly more challenging. Ask your friends, your family members, what's good with you, what's right with you. Tough question, isn't it? We're so accustomed to asking, what's wrong with me? Where can I improve? Tell me, what have I done wrong and what I could do better next time? Has any one of you really asked your friends, your family members, what's already right with you? Third, last but certainly not least, to celebrate your strengths. Celebrate yourself. Acknowledge that goodness already resides within you. The next time you do something that you are proud of, you accomplish something, you overcome adversity and challenges, I want you to celebrate that. A final message here to Gen Z. The road ahead is tough, it's challenging, it's uncertain. You will be faced with setbacks, failures, heartbreak, rejection, dejection, disappointment, the list goes on. But amidst all of that, if your inner voice, your dialogue is telling you to give up, you are worthless, you're undeserving, you're unlovable, I want you to challenge that. I want you to learn the language of strength so that your inner voice is not just one of criticism, but one of compassion. And to end, just one more quote, which I think summarizes and captures the essence of my talk here today. Everyone fails at who they are supposed to be. The measure of a person, of a hero, is how well they succeed at being who they are. Live kindly, live fully, but above all, live courageously true, authentically true to the goodness that already resides within you. Thank you.